Are you dreaming about a white house with black trim, but you need a little help choosing the paint colors? Well, for my exterior paint consultation service, I do a lot of white houses with black trim. And there's a few colors that I really recommend for achieving the look. When it comes to choosing a white for your exterior, there are a few important things to keep in mind. First, you don't want to choose a white that is too bright, or you risk your house looking just too stark or too difficult to look at. So you need to be aware of the paint colors LRV, which stands for light reflectance value. LRV is a measure of how light or dark a paint color is on a scale of 0 being the darkest to 100, which is the lightest. And it's important for white exteriors. You can find the LRV of a paint color on the manufacturer's website. Now, a good rule of thumb for exterior whites is that the LRV should be no higher than 85. If you get higher than 85, the white just tends to be too bright. For modern farmhouse exteriors, however, you do want a white that is on the brighter side. So I suggest aiming for a white that has an LRV between around 80 and 85. Secondly, for a modern farmhouse look, you also want a white that looks fairly neutral. You don't want your white to look overly creamy, and you also don't want your house to look overly stark, like it's primer on there. So my recommendation is to go with a white that has just a touch of warmth to it, with maybe some grayish undertones to keep it nice and neutral. Here are the whites that I recommend most often for a white house with black trim. Number 1 is Benjamin Moore's White Dove. Now, hands down, this is my favorite white for that modern farmhouse look. White Dove has an LRV of 85, which puts it on the brighter side for a white. It's a warm white, and it has a beautiful, just grayish base that keeps it looking really nice and neutral. White Dove will look crisp and bright on an exterior that gets a lot of sun, and it tends to perform really well in just a wide range of lighting conditions that often can affect how the paint color will look on your exterior. Things like how much shade you get or sun, or how warm or cool the light is that comes toward your house. Number 2 is Sherwin-Williams Alabaster. Alabaster has an LRV of 82, so it's just slightly darker than White Dove. It's also a little bit creamier than White Dove, which can be really great for north-facing houses that need just a touch more warmth to counteract the cooler lighting that it gets. While this is the creamiest of the whites I recommend for a modern farmhouse style exterior, it's definitely not overly creamy or yellow due to its brightness and the fact that it has some more subtle undertones to it. Number 3 is Sherwin-Williams Pure White. Now, with an LRV of about 84, Pure White is a little bit brighter than Alabaster and only a hint darker than White Dove. Pure White is considered a warm white, but it does have a much stronger kind of grayish undertone to it than both White Dove and Alabaster, making it actually a really good choice if you're west facing and your house gets a lot of warm light. Pure White looks really neutral on most homes, but it could sometimes look a little bit too gray and stark if your house faces north or east. Number 4 is Benjamin Moore's Seapearl, which is also known as China White. So you know how I said the ideal LRV for a modern farmhouse exterior was between 80 and 85? Well, Seapearl is just slightly under that at 78. However, Seapearl is a fabulous white for exteriors. It has grayish undertones that just lean ever so slightly more gray than beige, making it a fantastic option for west-facing homes. Also, if your house gets a ton of bright sunlight throughout the day, and White Dove, Alabaster, or Pure White just look way too bright to you, Seapearl should be next on your list to try. Now, I often get questions about Benjamin Moore's Chantilly Lace and Benjamin Moore's Simply White. Now, these two whites are both very popular white paint colors, so it's natural to think of them for a white exterior. However, they have very high LRV values that are much better suited to interiors. Chantilly Lace is very neutral, crisp, and bright, but it has an LRV of 92. Simply White has a tad more yellow to it and an LRV of just under 92. Now, I've seen these colors used on exteriors, and they are super bright, like too difficult to look at bright. And the only way I ever recommend either of these two paint colors as an exterior house color is if your house is very shaded and doesn't get much sunlight. So keep that in mind. All right, let's move on and talk about black trim colors. Now, even though paint colors tend to look brighter outside, I really don't recommend using the darkest black you can find for your exterior trim. The reason for that is it tends to look just too dark and severe as a house trim color, especially when you pair it with a white. Instead, you want to look at off blacks, which are colors that are almost black, but not quite. Off blacks tend to be a little bit softer and can have some richer undertones that give it a little more of an interesting and sophisticated overall look. Now, I recommend having an LRV for your black trim color that is greater than 5. And here are my favorite off blacks to use as a trim color with a white house. First up is Sherwin-Williams Iron Ore, which is my favorite off black trim color to use with a white house. It is very neutral and leans maybe just a hair toward the warm side. And it's also pretty dark with an LRV of 6. It has just enough softness to cut down on the contrast with a white body while still giving you a nice, true black trim look. Number 2 is Sherwin-Williams Urbane Bronze. Urbane Bronze is lighter and warmer than Iron Ore with an LRV of 8, and it also has a bit of brown in it, which leads to its bronze appearance, but it's really not overly warm looking. There's something magical that happens when you pair this trim color with Sherwin-Williams Alabaster, and it's become a very popular exterior combination. Here's a rendering that I did for one of my exterior paint consultations that shows Sherwin-Williams Alabaster on the body and Sherwin-Williams Urbane Bronze on the trim and doors. The lighter gray is Sherwin-Williams Dorian Gray on the shutters. Coming in at number 3 is Sherwin-Williams Black Fox. Sherwin-Williams Black Fox is a little darker than Urbane Bronze with an LRV of 7, and it has more brown to it. It's a rich, dark shade with enough gray in it to keep it from looking overly brown. It's a beautiful color that works well with any of the whites on my list. And in this picture, you can see Black Fox on the trim and garage door and how nicely it ties in with warm wood tones. Number 4 is Benjamin Moore's Wrought Iron. If you want your trim color to appear a little cooler and grayer, you should definitely give Benjamin Moore's Wrought Iron a try. It has the same posted LRV as Iron Ore, but it doesn't seem to look quite as rich and dark as Iron Ore on exteriors. Wrought Iron can be a right choice when other off-black trim colors are either looking too warm or if your home gets a lot of warm western sunlight. However, it might look too cool on a heavily shaded or north-facing home. Sherwin-Williams Tricorn Black is a really well-known popular black paint color. It's a deep, dark, pure black that has an LRV of just 3. Now, I love Tricorn Black for exterior shutters and front doors, and I recommend it often for those accents. But I don't recommend it for trim with a white house because it's just too dark. The contrast of a bright white house with a super dark black trim is just a little bit too jarring. You're going to be much better off softening that contrast with an off black. So if you really want something that is more of a true black, but maybe not quite as dark as Tricorn Black, you could try Benjamin Moore's Onyx. So these days, you don't have to look very far to see beautiful examples of a modern farmhouse exterior. That combination of a white house with black trim has just exploded in popularity over the last few years. And even though it's become a huge trend, white and black is really a classic color pairing that will never really go out of style. So with these paint color tips in this video, you're sure to have a home that looks fresh yet sophisticated, but you might still be wondering, which of these paint colors in this video are the right ones for your house? Well, the answer to that, really the only way to know which colors will look best on your home, is to sample them on your actual exterior. And the reason for that is that everyone's home has different lighting conditions, and those will affect the way that the paint looks on your exterior. So it's important to get samples and then view those samples in the morning, in the late afternoon sun, and also in shade and in full sunlight. And then the color that looks the best in all those lighting conditions, that's the right one for your home. Now you can run on down to your local paint store and get some sample cans and paint them on your exterior, but my favorite source for paint samples is Sampleize. They have peel and stick sample sheets that are inexpensive and super easy to use. Now, on the Sampleize website, they do have a disclaimer that their sample sheets are not recommended for exteriors, but I still find that their sample sheets are very valuable for exterior paint color sampling. And here's what I recommend you do. I recommend sticking the sample sheets onto some poster board or foam board rather than directly on your exterior, or you can even just leave them on their backing paper and just view them outside. The large, generous size of these Sampleize sheets are still just a great option for viewing and testing color options for your exterior without having to paint directly on your house. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button and subscribe for more tips and recommendations like these. Also, if you click the link to my website, you'll find a whole bunch of free resources that you can download that share paint colors and other home decorating tips. All right, I'll see you next time.